Tonight, cracking down on classroom distractions. The big plan to ban cell phones and vaping from schools. No longer leaving it to boards, Ontario looks to lock in province-wide restrictions.
This is an educational overhaul for the student, the teacher, and even the parent.
Removing vape products and denying the devices to help keep kids focused.
The teacher, she's teaching, and everybody's on their cell phones.
Pressure on Israel's prime minister intensifies as student protests grow.
We're not leaving. Students aren't leaving.
The fallout on campuses across Canada and around the world. Plus, overcoming adversity to inspire others.
I really want to just impact people deeply.
Finding strength to create a soundtrack celebrating life's most treasured moments.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. More than 30 million Canadians use cell phones, but there's a renewed push tonight to keep them out of classrooms. BC, Ontario, and Quebec have all been trying to set policies that stick. Those have largely been left to school boards and educators to implement. Now, Ontario is out with a new province-wide plan it hopes will do the trick, while also going after vaping products. CTV's Rahim Ladani reports.
Textbooks and notepads are essential supplies, but at schools across Ontario, students are being distracted by what has become another classroom staple.
The teacher, she's teaching, and everybody's on their cell phones looking down.
In an effort to get students to look up, the province is banning cell phones across all school boards.
We are throwing everything at this to change the culture positively in schools.
Beginning next school year, students in kindergarten to grade 6 will be required to keep their cell phone on silent and out of sight for the entire school day. For those in grades 7 to 12, cell phones will be banned during class time, unless given permission by an educator to use it for learning purposes.
Students deserve a school environment safe from distraction.
This isn't the first time cell phones have been banned in Ontario schools. The Toronto District School Board tried in 2007 before reversing the decision in 2011. Ontario's PC government tried to implement a ban in 2019, asking school boards to create a policy restricting cell phone use. This time, the education minister says there will be consistency province-wide and that he'll support teachers who enforce the policy by taking away cell phones from students who don't comply. Adding repeat offenders could be suspended, leaving some teachers skeptical.
I look forward to him supporting people through this, but we're going to spend a lot of time policing cell phones and not teaching.
The Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario said it was not given the opportunity to review the revisions before the government released them. The province is also banning vaping in all schools. Students found carrying vapes, e-cigarettes, or cannabis will be required to give them up to teachers, and their parents will be notified.
We are very concerned that if we don't help them young, they could land up dropping out of school, dropping out of the workforce.
The government says it plans to spend $30 million to install vape detectors. Rahim Ladani, CTV News, Toronto.
Quebec is pouring more than $500 million into a new 5-year plan aimed at protecting French.
French is who we are here in Quebec. So I think 603 million is not too much to defend our identity.
More than half of the money is meant to help immigrants and temporary foreign workers learn French. The plan also sets out measures to improve students' handle on French and expand French cultural productions. The language minister claims French is in decline, in part because of the dominance of English digital platforms and a growing number of non-French-speaking immigrants. Hundreds of university students in Montreal are camping out again, demanding action on the war in Gaza. Their pro-Palestinian demonstration, inspired by others across the U.S., underscoring the ongoing uncertainty about the deadly conflict. CTV's Jeremy Sharon reports.
Settling in for a second day, protesters in Montreal camping out on campus at McGill University. in solidarity with Palestinians.
We're not leaving. Students aren't leaving. They're going to hold the fort down and they're going to stand their ground.
Students calling on their schools to cut financial ties with Israel.
We want the university to commit to the students' demands. We want them to call for it, to commit to the calls for divestment.
But this movement met today with political pushback.
Setting up encampments on college campuses is a violation of pretty much every code of conduct. So to the extent that somebody needs to step in, I am asking the Quebec government to do so.
While across the border, brief clashing today between protesters and counter-protesters at UCLA.
Each one has their own opinions and views. We think we're right, probably they do also.
Pro-Palestinian demonstrations at schools across the U.S. showed no signs of slowing down this weekend, despite arrests being made on several campuses. On the ground in Gaza, gratitude from Palestinian students here for the support seen at university campus protests in the U.S.
Adding to the suffering that we witness every single day, we have to also work on finding maybe a way or anything to continue our future.
Meanwhile, Israel continues its military operation in the enclave, with a ground invasion in Rafah still being planned.
Again, we have to have a better understanding from the Israelis about what they want to do. As a matter of fact, we've had several staff talks with them. We intend to do that more. They've assured us that they won't go into Rafah until we've had a chance to really share our perspectives and our concerns with them.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is also set to visit the Middle East this week in an effort to restart ceasefire talks amid growing pressure from the international community for a pause. Heather?
CTV's Jeremy Sharon in Ottawa. As Jeremy mentioned, pressure is mounting on Israel and Hamas. A key Qatari mediator is urging both sides to show, quote, more commitment and more seriousness to achieve a ceasefire and free hostages. Today, U.S. President Joe Biden reiterated his position on a possible Rafah invasion and the need for humanitarian aid to reach Gaza during a call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. An aid group rocked by a deadly attack in Gaza plans to resume its work in the region tomorrow. World Central Kitchen halted food delivery a month ago after Israeli airstrikes killed 7 of its workers, including Canadian Jacob Flickinger. Israel accepted responsibility and said the strikes were unintentional. The charity is still calling for an independent investigation. Almost 3 years after the Taliban took control over Afghanistan, a plan to get Canadian aid into the region is now in motion. CTV's Kamal Karamali with the details and concerns about the timing.
Since Afghanistan fell to the Taliban nearly 3 years ago, there have been earthquakes, floods, and famine. The country at the brink of economic collapse with an increasing lack of women's rights.
The economic collapse, half of the population is not contributing to the economy, which are women.
Now Canada has plans to allow development aid to flow into the country later this year.
There's a need for long-term development activities to ensure that there's a sustainable future for the people of Afghanistan.
A recent report from Public Safety Canada highlights it's working to authorize certain activities in a geographic area that is controlled by a terrorist group and is looking to have full operational capacity by late 2024. The delay is due to Canada's anti-terrorism laws that make it illegal to provide development aid, where some of the funding may end up going to a designated terrorist group like the Taliban. But other nations, including the US and the UK, already created pathways for support more than 2 years before Canada by creating exemptions in their own anti-terrorism laws.
We were frustrated with the pace of this, and we certainly had been pushing the government and all the different parties involved.
Back in June of last year, Canada did allow limited life-saving humanitarian aid into Afghanistan, but not development aid like education, food, and supplies. Now, for many in the country, it's coming too little, too late.
Are you critical of the length of time Canada has taken?
Of course. And I mean, the Afghan people are critical of it. I think what Canada needs to realize is that the Afghan people are not the Taliban.
Canadian aid groups say they're already rounding up funding to provide development aid to the country later this year. Meanwhile, Public Safety Canada did not get back to us in time for our deadline when asked about the delays in providing aid to Afghanistan.
Heather.
Kamal Kramali in Toronto. British Columbia's move to no longer allow the use of illicit drugs in public has set off a national conversation about harm reduction. As CTV's Colton Prale reports, the federal Conservatives say it's time for new policies.
In overturning one of Canada's most progressive drug policies, Premier David Eby opened the door to pushback against federal harm reduction measures.
This kind of drugs, disorder, death, and destruction must come to an end. We need to ban hard drugs and stop giving out tax-funded opioids.
Eby's decision to recriminalize the use of illicit drugs in public spaces in British Columbia comes after concerns from police and hospital workers about open drug use.
We will not tolerate the safety of health professionals or patients in our hospitals being compromised.
In a new letter, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is calling for an emergency debate in the House of Commons on Ottawa's drug policies. Last year, Poilievre failed to pass a motion to stop federal safe supply programs, calling for the money to be used in addiction, treatment, and recovery programs. Experts say while adjustments to decriminalization are needed, harm reduction measures are necessary aspects of a bigger solution.
We need to be able to listen to people's concerns, make sure that they feel safe in their communities. But ultimately, we need to make sure that we're able to get people access to the help and care that they need.
Advocates argue recriminalizing drug use won't lead to fewer drug users.
It's not going to really make anyone safer. It'll just give the appearance of safety, but it might actually increase death.
Ottawa says they'll continue to address the drug crisis using an evidence-based approach, one that includes treatment, enforcement, prevention, and harm reduction. Heather.
Colton Prale reporting from Ottawa. There's devastation across multiple U.S. states tonight from a series of tornadoes.
I mean, you just can't believe the destruction. Like, it seems like every business in downtown has been destroyed now.
In Oklahoma, at least 4 people were killed, including an infant, when twisters tore through overnight. Other outbreaks since Friday leveled homes and triggered flood warnings across 7 states. More than 47 million people are still in the path of severe weather tonight. Environmentalists are sounding the alarm about the increasing number of pro-plastic lobbyists at UN treaty negotiations. The goal is to draft rules that will cut down on this form of pollution, but some are concerned corporations are working to weaken the wording of the treaty. CTV's Judy Trin explains.
Indigenous and environmental groups are concerned their voices aren't being heard, while powerful lobbyists are getting better access to member states.
It is troubling that industry and those responsible for polluting are part of the negotiating, influencing the outcomes of these talks.
Most plastic is made from fossil fuels, and some of the chemicals used in their production is toxic. The Center for International Environmental Law says 196 lobbyists from the petrochemical industry are at this UN summit, a 37% increase from the last round of talks.
There are commonly used techniques that are employed by industry and actors with conflicts of interest to delay or block policy action. And this includes things like providing misinformation or misrepresenting science, cherry-picking data, providing false experts.
To reduce waste, environmental groups want to eliminate single-use plastics that aren't essential.
We don't support a production cap.
Pro-plastic lobbyists support making products that can be recycled easier.
It's called advanced recycling, others call it chemical recycling. This is a technology that will make all of those single-use plastics infinitely recyclable.
More than 400 million tons of plastic was produced last year. Only 9% was recycled. Canada is one of the countries that has committed to ending plastic pollution by 2040, but it also has conflicts.
Canada is also a top 10 oil and gas producing nation, and so I think that in many ways is influencing or limiting their ability.
As host of these negotiations, Canada is under pressure to help deliver a strong treaty. But activists say lobbyists are also working behind the scenes to influence lower levels of government.
The industry has certain friends in certain provincial governments right now that are very supportive of oil and gas and petrochemicals and plastics.
It's hoped that a draft of a global agreement will be reached when these meetings end on Monday, but it will take another round of negotiations later this year in South Korea to finesse the wording before a treaty can be finalized. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
Coming up, dental frustration.
Everywhere I went, no, we're not in it. No, we're not in it. No, we're not going in it.
Dentists hesitant to fill the gaps on a new dental care plan. As a new national dental plan begins rolling out this week, it's unclear whether the 1.5 million seniors who signed up for subsidized care will be able to find it. CTV's Alison Bamford explains.
There's no addresses.
For years, Dennis Lissaway has paid out of pocket every time he goes to the dentist.
I paid $730 to have one tooth pulled.
Which is why the 81-year-old applied for the Canadian Dental Care Plan as soon as he was eligible. But the search to find a dentist enrolled in the plan was a little like pulling teeth.
Everywhere I went, no, we're not in it. No, we're not in it. No, we're not going in it.
Eventually finding one meant that he had to give up the comfort of his previous clinic.
That was the hardest part. You go to a dentist for years and they're not involved in it.
As of last week, more than 1.7 million patients had been approved to receive care under the plan, with only 5,000 dentists signed up to deliver it. Contract conditions and added administrative paperwork are just some of the concerns holding dentists back.
As a dentist, we do not want to establish a relationship with the federal government. We have a relationship with patients. I want to do a patient-focused dentistry. I don't want to do a government-focused dentistry.
The federal health minister says he's heard the concerns, recently announcing new options so all dentists can see patients under the plan, even if they don't formally enroll. But that alternative doesn't start until July.
The alternative pathway, as it's been described to us, is that you would see the patient and just submit a dental claim form the same way you would with anyone who's got regular insurance. The catch to that, of course, is that that automatically then makes you party to the terms and to the conditions that are the problems.
Many dentists want to provide the care, but not under these conditions. Concerns Lissaway hopes are cleared up soon, so patients don't have to jump through as many hoops as he did just to take care of their teeth. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Regina.
Still ahead, the risk of rising food costs. The unsettling results of a survey on expired goods. The fight against rising food prices appears to be coming at another cost for some Canadians. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth with a revealing story surrounding best before dates.
A new Dalhousie University food safety study surveyed more than 9,100 Canadians. The findings reveal 58%
are more enticed to eat food that would have a best before date either on that day or after.
Shalabaw says eating potentially spoiled food to save money is dangerous.
Animal proteins, I would be very careful.
Souls Harbor Rescue Mission feeds more than 600 Nova Scotians each day.
If their option is to eat a can of beans that expired 4 years ago or to have $2 to go and buy a new one, it's not an option for them.
Albert Kinslow regularly consumes food he knows could be unsafe.
Because of meager finances and inability to find affordable food.
Based on this study, 41% of Canadian millennials born 1980 to 1996 believe in the past year they ate food that was past the best before date and possibly made them sick. Charlebois says it's likely people ignored best before dates. Generation X, born 1960 to 1980, are next at 24%. Baby boomers, 1946 to 64, are 20%. 10% of those born before 1946 and born from 1997 to 2005 believe they ate unsafe food that made them sick.
If you get sick, it's going to cost you way more than that cabbage you didn't throw out.
Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
A celebrated Quebec composer and singer Jean-Pierre Ferland has died.
À l'envers, ne t'en retourne pas dehors.
Ferland is regarded as one of Quebec's top singers over the past century, a fixture of the province's cultural landscape, leaving behind a vast musical legacy. He was 89. After the break, Ari's theme and the strength behind his soundtrack. We leave you tonight on an inspirational note. A remarkable artist who channeled his creativity to realize an unexpected dream. He's now leaving a legacy composed by life's most treasured moments. CTV's Adam Sawatsky explains.
When Ari Canarthy embarked upon this quest, he never could have imagined where it would ultimately lead.
Feeling bored would be my biggest challenge.
Since he was a child, Ari had been fighting to find ways to have fun.
It feels very frustrating to be left out of activities that my friends can do and I can't do.
After losing the ability to play video games with a controller, Ari searched for a solution until he found technology that allowed him to control the action on screen with the movement of his breath.
I can play almost any game out there, and my friend can join me and we can have a great time.
But finding a pleasurable pastime couldn't compare to the unexpected discovery of his true passion.
I really want to just impact people deeply.
Despite spinal muscular atrophy progressively weakening his muscles, this adaptive technology, along with music therapy, was strengthening Ari's talent for composing.
My dream is to write music for film.
A reimagined quest, followed by an unexpected message from a stranger who offered to realize that dream.
I actually thought it was a scam.
Turns out, directors at the very real production company Salazar Films had heard about Ari's music and wanted to collaborate.
He wants to be regarded as an artist with a disability, not a disabled person who is an artist. And I think the film really focuses on that.
I like the challenge of writing grand symphonic music.
Ari's theme is a film within a film that documents how Ari overcomes adversity to compose the soundtrack for the movie. Music that celebrates his most impactful memories, and facing a condition that will shorten his life, fuels him to leave a meaningful legacy.
The audience gets to actively take part in the mission of the film itself.
And Ari gets to realize his ultimate quest was not to find play or passion, but his purpose. And for our triumphant hero, that's to inspire.
Now you only have one life, and it's best to live it to the fullest.
Adam Sawatsky, CTV News, Saanich.
And Ari's theme will see its world premiere this week at Toronto's Hot Docs Film Festival. That's our newscast for this Sunday. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Sandy and Omar are back tomorrow. Good night.